as they predicted. Threat, 35 of the 193 UN member nations abstained and 21 were absent. They affirmed what has been the United Nations stand on the divided holy city since 1967. That Jerusalem's final status must be decided in direct negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians. The Trump administration made it clear the vote would have no effect on its plan to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said afterward that he completely rejects the preposterous resolution. Palestinian UN Ambassador Riyad Mansour called the vote a victory not only for the Palestinians, but for the United Nations and international law, saying U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley failed miserably in persuading only 7 countries, aside from the U.S. and Israel, to vote against the resolution. And they use unprecedented tactics, unheard of in the diplomatic work at the UN, including blackmail and extortion, he said. The United States and Israel had waged an intensive lobbying campaign against the measure, with Haley sending letters to more than 180 countries warning that Washington would be taking names of those who voted against the U.S. Trump went further, threatening a funding cutoff. Let them vote against us. We'll save a lot. We don't care. But in the end, major U.S. aid recipients, including Afghanistan, Egypt, Jordan, Pakistan, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and South Africa, supported the resolution. Egypt received roughly $1.4 billion in U.S. aid this year, and Jordan about $1.3 billion. The 9 countries voting no were the U.S., Israel, Guatemala, Honduras, Micronesia, Nauru, Palau, the Marshall Islands, and Togo. Among the abstentions were Australia, Argentina, Canada, Colombia, Croatia, Czech Republic, and Mexico. The absent countries included Kenya, which was the 5th largest recipient of U.S. aid last year, Georgia and Ukraine, all of which have close U.S. ties. The U.S. is scheduled to dispense $25.8 billion in foreign aid for 2018. Whether Trump follows through with his threat against those who voted yes remains to be seen. After the vote, Haley tweeted a photo naming the 65 nations that voted no, abstained, or were absent, and said, "We appreciate these countries for not falling to the irresponsible ways of the UN." But within hours, the Trump administration appeared to be backing away from its funding threats. In Washington, State Department spokeswoman Heather Nauert said cuts to countries that oppose the U.S. are not a foregone conclusion. The president's foreign policy team has been empowered to explore various options going forward with other nations, Nauert said. However, no decisions have been made. During the debate, Arab, Islamic, and non-aligned nations urged a yes vote on the resolution, which was sponsored by Yemen and Turkey. Yemeni Ambassador Khalid Hussein Mohammed Ali Mani warned that Trump's recognition of Jerusalem undermines any chances for peace in the Mideast and serves to fan the fires of violence and extremism. He called Trump's actions a blatant violation of the rights of the Palestinian people and the Arab nations and all Muslim and Christians of the world, and a dangerous violation and breach of international law.
Hi, thank you so much, Ralph. I'm going to go into what you need to know about the tax bill's impact. Federal taxes can be confounding in any typical year, but Congress's mad dash to approve the most sweeping tax overhaul in 3 decades has left many households unsure of what changes might await them come January 1st and what they should do, if anything, before or after them. We attempt some clarity. Rate change. For individuals, the legislation generally lowers rates across income levels. It retains the number of tax brackets, 7, but changes the rates that apply to particular income levels. For a couple filing jointly, the brackets will be 10% for taxable income up to $19,050, 12% on $19,050 to $77,400, 22% on income to $165,000, 24% up to $315,000, 32% to $400,000, 35% to $600,000, and 37% on income above $600,000. These rates don't include the effects of deductions, which could change someone's marginal tax rate. The marginal rate is the highest rate that applies to a taxpayer's income. But under the bill, the individual tax rate cuts aren't permanent. They're set to expire in 2026. Taxpayers, on average, would receive a $1,600 tax cut in 2018, according to analysis by the Tax Policy Center, though about 5% of households would pay more. The Policy Center says middle-income households would receive a tax cut of about $900, while the top 1% would get a tax cut of about $50,000. By 2027, after most individual income tax provisions expire, more than half of taxpayers would pay more tax than under current law. One potential way to take advantage of next year's lower tax rate would be to defer income, if possible, from 2017 into 2018. Standard deduction. The bulk of Americans don't itemize their tax deductions. They instead benefit from claiming the standard deduction. Under the bill, the standard deduction will be roughly double to $12,000 for individuals and $24,000 for couples. So a greater share of these taxpayers' income will be shielded from tax. And because of the new cap on itemizing state and local tax deductions, households that households that previously itemized may now fare better by taking the standard deduction. The increased standard deduction is also to expire in 2026. Taxpayers who have itemized their deductions but will likely take the standard deduction next year might consider making full use of their deductions during 2017. This could include making charitable contributions or paying for unreimbursed business expenses before year's end. But if a household's deductions for charitable giving, mortgage interest, state and local taxes of up to $10,000, and other items exceed $12,000 or $24,000 for a couple, it can still itemize and claim the higher amount. Yet the bill doesn't just provide new benefits, it also takes away some. An example is the personal exemption. A taxpayer can now deduct from his income a $4,050 exemption for himself, his spouse, and each dependent. So while the standard deduction is doubling, that benefit could be offset for families by the elimination of the personal exemptions. Child tax credit. The child tax credit, which helps parents offset the cost of raising children, will double from $1,000 per child to $2,000. The bill also makes up to $1,400 of credit refundable. This means you can claim that portion of the credit even if your income is too low for you to owe tax. This is a credit, so it's particularly valuable because it directly reduces your tax bill, not just your taxable income. Taxpayers don't have to itemize to receive it. The credit will begin to phase out once a household's adjusted gross income hits $200,000 for individuals or $400,000 for couples. Still, because of how it's written, because of other tax changes, the increased child credit won't provide much help for low and middle income families. About 10 million children in the lowest income working families would receive a token increase of $75 at best, if any at all, according to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. That's because lower income workers don't earn enough to receive much of a credit. The child tax credit also expires in 2026. Mortgage interest. The bill limits the deduction of interest to be paid on the first $750,000 of a loan for a newly purchased first or second home. The current limit is $1 million. A homeowner who is affected by this tax change might consider making an extra mortgage payment in 2017 before the tax changes reduce the portion of their mortgage interest that they can deduct next year. State and local taxes. The tax plan ends the unlimited federal deduction for state and local income and sales taxes. Taxpayers will now be allowed to deduct only up to $10,000 in combined property and state and local income taxes. This could hurt people in such high tax states as New York, New Jersey, and California. The architects of the Republican bill barred taxpayers from prepaying in 2017 any state or local income taxes that will face next year. While the bill doesn't address the prepayment of property taxes, doing so might be ill-advised. Pass-through income. This legislation cuts taxes on business income, specifically for business people whose profits are passed through and taxed at their personal tax rate. Many experts argue that this will provide an incentive for taxpayers to become independent contractors and restructure their salaries as business income. A high-income earner, who would otherwise have to pay the top rate of 37%, would pay roughly 30% on pass-through income. The bill tries to prevent the abuse of this provision, but accountants may find a way around this rule. If so, it might be worth checking with your accountant next year to see if it makes sense to set up an LLC or other partnership and reap the benefits. Healthcare. The bill retains deductions for medical expenses not covered by insurance for 2018 and 2019, once expenses exceed 7.5% of adjusted gross income. That rises to 10% starting in 2020. And it repeals the requirement in Barack Obama's healthcare law that people pay a tax penalty if they don't buy health insurance.
And from Washington, as President Donald Trump completes his first year in office, Americans are increasingly concerned about healthcare, and their faith that government can fix it has fallen. A new poll by the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research finds that 48% named healthcare as a top problem for the government to focus on in the next year, up 17 points in the last 2 years. The poll allows Americans to name up to 5 priorities and found a wide range of top concerns, including taxes, immigration, and the environment. But aside from healthcare, no single issue was named by more than 31%. And 7 in 10 of those who named healthcare as a top problem said they had little to no confidence that government can improve matters. Less pessimistic in last year's edition of the poll, when just more than half of the respondents said they lacked confidence in the problem-solving ability of lawmakers and government institutions. We are way up there on cost, and as far as giving good health care, we are way down, said Rebecca Bustamante of San Antonio, a retired medical imaging technician. Now in healthcare, you're a number. Bustamante said she voted for Trump, but he's learning on the job, and he's got a long way to go. Trump initially promised his own plan, which would deliver insurance for everybody and great health care, but much less expensive and much better. But the White House never released a healthcare proposal from the president. GOP legislation to repeal and replace former President Barack Obama's healthcare law failed in Congress, although the tax bill scraps the Obama requirement that most people get health insurance. Bloodied on both sides, Republicans and Democrats seem to have battled to an uneasy draw on healthcare. Meanwhile, conflicting policy signals from Washington, including an abrupt White House decision to cancel insurer subsidies, roiled insurance markets. Premiums on health plans purchased by individuals jumped by double digits. Progress reducing the number of uninsured stalled, and one major survey found an uptick this year. There is zero bipartisanship, and it's frustrating, said Eric Stabb, a high school teacher from Topeka, Kansas. It seems like we've thrown everything at this dartboard and nothing is improving the coverage. Rumblings of discontent have political repercussions for next year's midterm elections and the presidential contest in 2020, said Robert Blendon, a professor at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, who follows opinion trends on healthcare. It's the issue that won't go away, said Blendon. Given the news cycle, taxes should be the first, the economy should be second, and this healthcare thing should be buried. 3 in 10 Americans listed taxes among their top priorities, about double the percentage who said that last year. About a quarter mentioned immigration, and just less than 2 in 10 mentioned environmental issues and education. Meanwhile, concerns about unemployment plunged to 14%, about half the mentions as last year. Healthcare was by far the top issue mentioned by Democrats and independents. Republicans were about equally likely to mention immigration, healthcare, and taxes. Democrats were more likely than Republicans to say they have little to no confidence that government will make progress on healthcare, 84% to 57%. The reason healthcare doesn't fade away is that costs aren't getting any more manageable, said people who took part in the AP NORC survey. Bustamante said she's planning a trip to Mexico for some dental work because she can obtain quality service for much less there. Thank God I live in Texas. We're getting to Mexico isn't that far away, she said, but everybody doesn't have that option.
Heading to Washington now. Shutdown avoided with stopgap spending bill. The Republican-led Congress passed a temporary spending bill Thursday to avert a government shutdown, doing the bare minimum in a sprint toward the holidays and punting disputes on immigration, healthcare, and the budget to next year. The measure passed in the House on a 231 to 188 vote over Democratic opposition, and then cleared the Senate 66 to 32. Nebraska and Iowa senators supported the measure. President Donald Trump is expected to sign the measure. The stopgap legislation would keep the government from closing down at midnight today. All 5 GOP House members from Nebraska and Western Iowa voted for the short-term spending bill. The measure encountered resistance from the GOP's most ardent allies of the military, as well as opposition from Democrats who demanded but were denied a vote on giving immigrants brought to the country as children and in the country illegally an opportunity to become citizens. The bill allows Republicans to savor their win on this week's $1.5 trillion tax package, even as they kick a full lineup of leftover work into the next year. Congress will return in January facing enormous challenges on immigration, the federal budget, health care, and national security, along with legislation to increase the government's authority to borrow money. Each of those items is sure to test the unity that Republicans are enjoying now. It's not the best way to govern, it's not the right way to govern, but it's the reality of governance right now. Representative Jeff Fortenberry, Republican, Nebraska, a member of the Appropriations Committee, said of the bill. He said the country did not need to deal with a government shutdown. Representative Don Bacon from Nebraska criticized the use of short-term spending measures, but said he agreed with military leaders that the bill approved Thursday is the best course of action for now, to keep the government funded and protect Americans from security threats. In addition, shutting down the government would be irresponsible because hardworking men and women, including those in uniform at Offutt Air Force Base, deserve their paychecks, Bacon said. Representative Steve King from Iowa said passing the short-term measures means the public discussion over the Christmas break will be about the big tax overhaul. King said he was pleased to see that the spending bill avoided any fix to DACA, the program that shields from deportation those brought into the country illegally as children. That fight is now punted to next month, although King said he's hopeful the program will simply end. Every one of them, by definition, are lawbreakers, King said of DACA recipients. 4 of the 5 House members representing Nebraska and Western Iowa also supported a supplemental disaster aid funding measure. Iowa Republican David Young, however, voted against it. We should help our neighbors in times of need and care for each other, Young said in a press release. This is why I supported the 2 previous emergency aid packages, but today's package is nearly double what the administration says it needs, and it just doesn't give Iowans a clear explanation of how their taxpayer dollars will be spent. The $81 billion worth of disaster aid stalled in the Senate, where Republicans and Democrats want to make changes to the package.
In a remarkably strong show of consumer demand, nearly 9 million people signed up for Obamacare next year. As government numbers out Thursday proved predictions of its collapse wrong yet again. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services said more than 8.8 million people have signed up in the 39 states served by the federal healthcare.gov website. That compares with 9.2 million last year in the same states, or 96% of the previous total. The level exceeds what experts thought was possible after another year of political battles over the Affordable Care Act, not to mention market problems like rising premiums and insurer exits. On top of that, the Trump administration cut the enrollment season in half, slashed the ad budget, terminated major payments to insurers, and scaled back grants for consumer counselors. This level of enrollment is truly remarkable, especially given the headwinds faced by the program, said Larry Levitt of the nonpartisan Kaiser Family Foundation. President Trump insistently predicted Obamacare would implode as he pursued unsuccessful efforts to repeal it in Congress. This week, he incorrectly declared the GOP tax bill had essentially repealed it. Despite all that, more than 1 million new customers signed up last week ahead of a December 15 deadline for healthcare.gov. That's a sign of solid interest in the program, which offers subsidized private health insurance to people who don't have access to job-based coverage. It's possible that final healthcare.gov numbers could end up somewhat higher than reported Thursday because of late signups in the Midwest and the West have yet to be added in. The nationwide enrollment total won't be known for weeks, since some states running their own health insurance markets or exchanges continue signing up customers through January. Total national enrollment could wind up near last year's final number of 12.2 million.
All right, turning to the front page of the World Herald. Letter gives Cabela's clues for future. Bass CEO details jobs that will remain in Sydney, 3 stores in state to stay open. Cabela's will retain some jobs in Sydney, Nebraska, but it's still unclear how many will be lost after a letter sent to employees by the chief executive of the retailer's new owner, Bass Pro Shops. Bass will also keep open all of Cabela's retail stores in Nebraska, in Sydney, Kearney, and La Vista, according to the letter, which was obtained by the World Herald. Bass Pro Chief Executive Johnny Morris sent the 11-page document to employees in Sydney on Thursday. In it, Morris detailed some of the operations that will stay in Sydney as the combined Bass-Cabela's consolidates its headquarters in Bass's hometown of Springfield, Missouri. The letter didn't say how many jobs would be cut in Sydney, the city of about 6,800, where Cabela's has employed 2,000 people in recent years. A Bass Pro spokesman wouldn't comment on potential job cuts when contacted Thursday by the World Herald. The spokesman said Morris visited Sydney on Wednesday and met with Cabela's employees. What will stay? Bass said Thursday in its letter that it will keep Cabela's Information Technology Division, which employs 125 people. The letter says significant accounting operations also will remain in Sydney, although it didn't say what operations or how many people the division would employ. The distribution center in Sydney will also remain. The document said the company is continuing to work on evaluating which jobs will stay in Sydney, which ones will stay in Springfield, and which ones will need to be eliminated. One of our biggest priorities is to be as thoughtful to Cabela's outfitters and the city of Sydney as we possibly can and go above and beyond what is required to be very fair and supportive, the document said. Outside of Sydney, the company's credit card operation in Lincoln will remain, according to the letter, along with call centers in Grand Island, Kearney, North Platte, and Lincoln. The call centers employ approximately 350 people, the document said. Some employees, however, will lose their jobs, according to the letter. It said that those employees will receive severance and that Bass Pro has allocated an additional $10 million to extend benefits and pay for employees who will be displaced. The company has hired CareerArc, an outplacement firm, to help employees who might need to relocate and find new work. The company, in the document, said it's also pondering establishing an early retirement package. Employees in Sydney will be consolidated into one of the Cabela's office buildings. The document said empty buildings on the Cabela's campus will effectively be donated by Bass Pro Shops to the city of Sydney. Bass will lease them for $1 per year to any qualified businesses that may want to open an operation in Sydney, the document said. The company also detailed what staff will occupy some senior leadership positions in the new combined company. Of the 12 positions listed, 3 will be employees from Cabela's who will relocate to Springfield. Ralph Kastner, who had been Cabela's chief financial officer, will serve as CFO for the combined company in Springfield. Sarah Kaiser, who worked in human resources at Cabela's, will become senior vice president of human resources for the combined company. And Sheila Dorman, a Cabela's employee for 17 years, will become vice president of finance for White River Marine Group, one of Bass Pro's subsidiaries. Bass Pro completed its $5 billion acquisition of Cabela's in September. In the letter Thursday, Morris thanked employees and said he hoped they take pride in their personal contributions to building iconic brands. Still, the last page of the letter detailed the realities of a competitive retail market and challenging outdoor hunting segment. Morris said more than 1,000 outdoors-related stores have closed in recent years. He called out Cabela's specifically, noting that the retailer's sales had been in decline since 2013 and that its retail business was on track to lose money in 2017. And research by Mercer, a human resources consultant, highlighted that Cabela's had more layers of management than similar companies, according to the letter, in part because it was a publicly traded company. Cabela's has been operating under the weight of an extremely heavy corporate payroll that is over 2 times greater than that of the Bass Pro Shops to conduct relatively the same volume of business, Morris said in the letter. It is now time for a new approach and to turn around the strategies that did not work, Morris said. He signed the cover letter to the document, respectfully and with great optimism.
At least 2 Lincoln companies are planning to use their expected windfall from tax cuts to pay bonuses to employees. Nelnet said Thursday that it will give nearly all of its 4,100 employees, about 2,500 of whom work in Lincoln, a $1,000 bonus in their December 29 paycheck. Pinnacle Bank also said it plans to give $1,000 bonuses to all of its full-time employees in Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri. Both companies said the bonuses are the result of the recently passed congressional tax bill. In Nelnet's case, it will benefit from a reduction in the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. Pinnacle Bank, which is organized as an S corporation, benefits from a different provision that exempts up to 20% of net taxable income. Nelnet CEO Jeff Nordek said the tax bill or tax plan will greatly benefit the financial services company, which does very little business overseas and pays close to the full corporate tax rate. According to its 2016 annual report, its effective tax rate that year was 35.5%. While the reduction in taxes will provide the company extra cash to invest and return to shareholders, we also want to share this benefit with our employees, Nordic said. All Nelnet employees, except for senior managers who've been with the company for at least 6 months, will receive the $1,000 bonus. Those employed less than 6 months will get $500. Pinnacle Bank said 1,007 employees will receive the $1,000 bonus. We feel strongly that the message should be loud and clear that this is a tax cut that will benefit all Americans, Pinnacle Bank Chairman Sid Dinsdale said in a news release. Nelnet and Pinnacle Bank join a number of other companies that have announced plans to share some of their tax savings with workers. AT&T and Comcast both announced Wednesday that they would give $1,000 bonuses to their employees, while Wells Fargo, which has several hundred employees in Nebraska, said it would raise its minimum wage to $15 an hour. The bonus plan will cost Nelnet about $4 million, but based on its 2016 income tax numbers, the corporate tax rate cut should reduce its income tax liability by more than $50 million. Pinnacle Bank will spend a little more than $1 million to pay out employee bonuses.
Go to the Midland section in the World Herald. Grinch deterrence. Police offer ways to thwart package theft. Packages left on doorsteps can be easy targets for thieves. but an Omaha police lieutenant says a few common sense practices could scuttle the porch pirates. When thieves think they are being looked at, they generally move on to another neighborhood, said Lieutenant Pat Rowland of the Omaha Police Department's Criminal Investigation Bureau. For thieves, it's all about finding an opportunity and grabbing those things. Package theft is a problem all year round, but the holiday season offers many more opportunities, Rowland says. Shoppers increasingly are ordering items online, and the delivery business is in high gear. Thefts certainly increase at this time of year, he said. It's a target-rich environment. From November 2nd through December 7th, Rowland said the Omaha Police Department received 16 reports of packages being stolen. From November 1st through Tuesday in Lincoln police officer Angela Sands said people made 98 reports of package thefts. We have a theft ring operating here recently, but we've made arrests, Sands said. Luckily, we're also recovered a lot of those packages. The best way to thwart thieves, police say, is to have the package delivered to your place of work or to a neighbor who's going to be home. Alternative pickup options include having the package delivered to an access point. For example, UPS has an access point network that includes grocery and convenience stores. Delivery companions also offer tracking services so you know exactly when a package will arrive. That will allow you to pick it up soon after it's delivered or have a neighbor grab it for you. Vigilant neighbors also can watch out for suspicious activity, such as a vehicle following a delivery truck or a stranger taking packages from outside a home. Any suspicious activity should be reported to the police, Rowland said. He also suggested the residents instruct delivery companies to stash packages out of sight if possible. Packages can be placed around a corner, behind porch furniture, or in empty planters. These delivery companies want to work with you, he said. Their drivers are good about placing packages in special places. We know because we sometimes tail them ourselves to see how they operate and watch for thieves. Home surveillance cameras help deter and even capture thieves. A popular version is a camera that connects to the doorbell and notifies the homeowner's smartphone whenever a visitor arrives. The resident is able to see and speak to anyone or just monitor the area. Believe me, the burglars and thieves see the glow ring around the doorbell and they know it's a camera, Rowland said. You will see them turn around and just walk away. You can also send a video of a suspicious person to your neighbors. Surveillance cameras allow police to put out descriptions of suspects and give officers information about their vehicles. Identifying a package thief goes a long way to making a conviction in court, Rowland says. If we can identify them, we can usually get a successful prosecution, he said. It's easier to recover the stolen items, of course, if we can catch the thieves right away. Rowland said he can appreciate but wouldn't recommend the practice of planting a bait box to surprise the thieves. A man in Tacoma, Washington got tired of packages being stolen from his porch, so he created an empty box decoy with a detonator inside that makes a loud noise when someone tries to take the box. My concern is that in this crazy world, someone gets startled, falls, and gets hurt, Rowland said. They haven't stolen anything, and they could claim that the homeowner is at fault. You could end up getting sued.
Officials at a homeless shelter for women in Havelock have asked for donations of old cell phone chargers, and phone cards to help them link up with those awaiting the shelter's services. Fresh Start at 6433 Havelock Avenue has 24 beds that allow women to stay there for up to a year while they rebuild their lives, board member Michael Reinmiller said Thursday. But the shelter is always at capacity and often has to put women on waiting lists, he said. When a bed opens up, staff there can have a hard time contacting some women on the wait list who might not have a working phone or an up-to-date address, Reinmiller said. So Fresh Start and the Lincoln Police Department have partnered in an effort to help the shelter ensure women receive service as needed. You don't know if this system is going to work, but we're sure going to try, Reinmiller said. Phones, chargers, and phone cards can be dropped off at any of the three main police stations. LPD headquarters at 575 South 10th Street, the University Place substation at 48th Street and Huntington Avenue, and the Center Team substation at 27th and Holdridge Streets. Donors should drop gifts off during regular business hours, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., Officer Angela Sand said. Fresh Start serves women from 19 years of age and older. Stays in the traditional shelter generally range from 3 to 9 months, Ryan Miller said. While in the shelter, women receive job training and help get their finances in order so they can move out on their own. Helping a woman in crisis get into shelter is worth dropping off the old cell phone that's sitting unused in a home drawer, he said. If it can maybe save someone's life, why not?
This is from Walnut, Iowa. A smile flashed across Bentley Lavorne's face. He'd just put on a pair of new mittens. A new bomber stocking cap was already on his head, new boots on his feet. Bentley excitedly moved to try on his new jacket. The attire was among the Christmas gifts that Bentley, 4 years old, and his parents received from the owner and patrons of Emma Jean's restaurant in Walnut. There are no words that describe how helpful this is. If this wasn't for this, he'd have just a couple of things for Christmas, said Stuart Lavorne, Bentley's father. Lavorne is a U.S. Navy veteran, recently discharged and working on trying to get on our feet with wife Brittany and their son. The couple have been married for 4 years. Brittany is pregnant, due any day now, with a boy they'll name Noah. The pair said they were thankful for the help of Emma Jean's owner, Lynn Driver, the restaurant's customers, and Pottawatomie County Veterans Affairs, which helped connect Driver and the Lavornes. This is great. This is helping a family, supporting them, and providing for their needs, said Darlene McMartin, head of the county VA department. Since Driver took over as owner of Emma Jean 6 years ago, he's helped a family in need by paying a utility bill during the holiday season. This year, Driver expanded the idea, due in part to his friendship with McMartin. He asked if she had a family his restaurant could sponsor. McMartin originally didn't, but late last week she connected with the Lavornes. Driver sprang into action, putting up flyers in the restaurant with a list of items, including necessary goods, along with gift ideas for Bentley and the soon-to-be-born Noah. Emma Jean's customers responded. The effort started on December 14th, and by Tuesday, Driver had gathered a number of essential items, like Bentley's winter wear and clothes for Stuart and Brittany, along with plenty of toys for Bentley and Noah. Driver, McMartin, and others celebrated with a pizza party for the family at Emma Jean's. It really came together fast, Driver said. My patrons have filled this wish list for these people. It's just been incredible. Driver recounted the story of one family that purchased one of every item on the list he distributed. Emma Jean's is just north of Interstate 80 and sees a lot of out-of-town traffic. While the majority of donations came from locals, visitors as far away as West Virginia left a cash donation. Just an outpouring from the community and beyond, Driver said. Stuart Lavorne served almost 11 years in the U.S. Navy, working as a firefighter on ships. His official title was Damage Control Man. His service took him to Japan and San Diego, along with 6 deployments to Bahrain and the Persian Gulf. Lavorne was discharged in late August of this year, medically retired because of the effects of a broken kneecap and other physical ailments. He and Brittany met through Facebook during his last Bahrain deployment in 2012. Brittany is from Las Vegas. Stuart is a Lincoln native. We just hit it off, Stuart said. He eventually proposed while still deployed, the couple having never met in person. They united when Stuart returned in early 2013, got married, and honeymooned at Stuart's next posting in Norfolk, Virginia. After Stuart's discharge, the Lavornes decided to move to the Walnut area. They're currently staying with family just north of town. Bentley laughed as he tried on his new clothes and tried to take a peek at other gifts that would come his way. Asked if he liked the pizza, the youngster took a large, exaggerated bite. I'll take that as a yes, his dad said. This has made Christmas everything for him, Stuart Lavorne said, and for us, the meaning behind it. You always hear the stories about people doing this. To have it happen to us, words just can't explain.
And nearly 300 people have died in train crashes that could have been prevented if railroads across the U.S. implemented critical speed control technology that federal safety investigators have been pushing for close to 5 decades, according to rail crash data obtained Wednesday by the Associated Press. But despite overwhelming evidence it could save lives, Congress extended the deadlines for railroads to implement positive train control for years. All the while, new high-speed train routes continue to spring into operation without the technology, including the new route involved in Monday's Amtrak crash south of Seattle that killed 3 people, and one in Florida that's expected to start service in the coming weeks. And let's see. Well, Becca, I'll give it back to you. I'm out of local news, I guess.
Activists push for more action on White Clay. Activists involved in shutting down beer sales in White Clay called on the state to do more to not only end bootlegging of alcohol in the area, but to investigate unsolved slayings in the unincorporated village. Oklahoma attorney John Maish, who produced a documentary on the alcohol-related problems linked to White Clay, called a recent legislative report on the village wholly inadequate and tone-deaf to some bigger issues affecting the town. Overall, he said, closing down the beer stores, which sold the equivalent of 3.5 million cans of beer a year to residents of nearby Indian reservation that bans alcohol, was just a first step. It removed the most obvious location to purchase alcohol, Maish said. Of course, we never did say that would stop all the problems. Maish, as well as Native American activists Frank Lemire and Lincoln businessman Alan Jacobson, called on the state to increase enforcement to stem purchases of alcohol in other nearby towns by bootleggers, and to form a cold case unit to look into unsolved slayings in White Clay. Lemire of South Sioux City said there have been at least 5 unsolved killings in White Clay in the past 2 decades. He said he lacks faith in county investigators to solve them. Someone needs to step in, he said. We've got to have justice for these people. Lemire provided 2 letters he sent to Governor Pete Ricketts, and Jacobson provided a letter he had sent to Nebraska Attorney General Doug Peterson about further investigation into the White Clay slayings. Officials from those offices did not respond immediately on Thursday afternoon. 2 slayings in 1999 of White Clay Street people Wally Black Elk and Ronald Hardheart helped spark protests and first drew national attention to the beer sales in White Clay. The killings were never solved, though an FBI website still offers a $50,000 reward for information. More recently, in August 2016, Sherry Woundedfoot was found unconscious on the streets of White Clay and was taken to a Rapid City, South Dakota hospital. She died 12 days later. Foul play was suspected, but no arrests have been made. Both Lemire and Jacobson said that a cold case unit involving state and federal investigators should be called in. As for bootlegging, Maish said it's apparent that liquor is being purchased in other towns near White Clay, then resold on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, where alcohol is banned. Last month, Ogallala Sioux Tribal Police and federal authorities discovered a cache of water bottles during some arrests for supervised released violations. Bootleggers, a tribal press release said, were mixing vodka and rubbing alcohol and selling the bottles for $10 each. While the tribe has a responsibility to bust bootleggers, Maish says Nebraska also has an obligation to make sure that liquor stores in this state aren't fueling the illegal sales. Hobart Root, the executive director of the Nebraska Liquor Control Commission, said liquor stores are required by law to document when someone buys more than 20 gallons of beer or alcohol at one time. But he said he cannot comment on efforts to enforce that requirement. State Senator Patty Panzine Brooks of Lincoln, who co-chaired a recent legislative task force on the White Clay, said she is glad that others are also bringing forth ideas on how to improve White Clay. She did not comment about why the task force report released Wednesday did not include the suggestions made by the activists. The task force is charged, as outlined by the legislature, was to focus on public health and economic development issues. Did you find anything else over there? I've got some stuff probably.
All right, go ahead.
Back in the U.S., ex-Marine plans to move to Iowa. Former Marine Marco Chavez could not sleep the night before he was set to cross the border and return to the United States, a country he considers home. Excuse me, after he was deported to Mexico 15 years ago following a dog beating conviction. When Chavez finally walked Thursday into the United States through the Tijuana-San Diego border crossing Thursday, he was speechless and still in disbelief that he had won his battle to regain his permanent U.S. residency. It was a historic day for the Mexican-born father of three who returned to the U.S. as a grandfather. He is considered among the few former service members to regain permanent residency out of hundreds of veterans who have been deported. The return gives hope to the other deported U.S. military veterans, said Nathan Fletcher, a Marine combat veteran whose organization lobbied on Chavez's behalf. Earlier this year, at the request of Fletcher's organization, California Governor Jerry Brown pardoned Chavez for a 1998 conviction for animal cruelty in a dog beating. Chavez said another person was responsible. Months after he was pardoned, an immigration judge granted Chavez's request to return. Chavez was a baby when his parents brought him to the United States. He joined the Marine Corps at age 19, served 4 years during peacetime, and received an honorable discharge. He was deported in 2002. Chavez, whose 3 sons were young at the time, stayed in Tijuana. His wife moved the family to be with him, but found life too difficult in the violence-plagued Mexican city. She eventually moved back to the United States, settling with his sons in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, after they divorced. Chavez is now 45, and his sons range from 17 to 21. Chavez plans to live with his parents in Los Angeles while he waits for his residency card to be replaced. He then will move to Iowa and try to rebuild a relationship with his children.
It is time for us to turn to death and funeral notices in each of our papers. These from the Lincoln Journal-Star for Friday, December 22nd. Brooks, Robert L. Brooks Jr., died December 18 in Lincoln. Fallows, Donald Eugene Fallows, was 90 and lived in Lincoln. He was a veteran serving in World War II. The Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home is handling services, memorials to the Haiti Lutheran Mission Society or Tabitha Hospice, both organizations in Lincoln. Jelsma, Tommy Jelsma, was 90 years of age and lived in Lincoln. The Aspen Aftercare Service is handling arrangements. Jewett, Samuel L. Jewett, was 81 and lived in Lincoln. He died December 17. Memorials to the Masonic Lodge number 35 in Hiawatha, Kansas. No funeral home is mentioned. Mason, Tammy S. Mason, was 56 and lived in Syracuse. The Fusselman Allen Harvey Funeral Home in Syracuse. Memorials are suggested to the family for future designation. Messer, Bill or William K. Messer, was 77 and lived in Burr. He died on December 18. He was a veteran serving in the U.S. Air Force. The Fusselman Allen Harvey Funeral Home in Syracuse is handling services in lieu of flowers. Memorials suggested to the family for future designation. Marino, Nathan Ty Marino, was 41 years of age and died in Omaha. Memorials can be sent to People's City Mission Free Clinic in Lincoln, Nebraska. Neidfelt Marcella Arvilla Hirschberger Neidfelt was 76 and lived in Falls City, Nebraska. She died on December 18 in Lincoln. Services are handled by the Dorr and Clark Funeral Home in Falls City. In lieu of flowers, memorials are suggested to the Order of the Eastern Star, Chapter 234, BPOE Dove 56, or St. Paul's Lutheran Church. Pennis, Edwin J. Pennis, was 82 and lived in Lincoln. The Butheris, Mazer, and Love Funeral Home. Pestle, Clarence F. Pestle, was 97 and lived in Wahoo. He was a veteran. The Marcy Svoboda Funeral Home is handling arrangements. Memorials may be given to Memorial Missions Fund at Calvary Church in Wahoo. Philippe, Paul Clifton Philippe, died December 19 at the age of 85 in Syracuse. The family requests memorials in lieu of flowers to Shriners Children's Hospital or St. Jude's Research Hospital, the Fusselman Ellen Harvey Funeral Home in Syracuse. Ruppel, Lynn C. Ruppel, was 80 and lived in Lincoln. Memorial contributions may be made to the Cat House in Lincoln or the American Cancer Society or the donor's choice. Condolences through Roper and Sons Funeral Home. Reinsch, that's R-E-I-N-S-C-H, Francis L. Reinsch, died December 21 at the age of 88 in Geneva. Memorials may be directed to the family for future designation, the Farmer and Son Funeral Home in Geneva. Let's see. Hubert Huppert, Huppert, Mary Kay Huppert, lived in Falls City, where she died on December 19. And my final notice is for Messer, Bill or William K. Messer, died at the age of 77 in Burr, Nebraska. No additional information.
All right. The World Herald obituary and funeral arrangements. Bougie, Helen L. Bougie. She was 92. Her funeral service is going to be Saturday, December 23rd at 10:30 a.m. at the Bellevue Church of Christ in Bellevue, Nebraska. Memorials will be directed by the family. Arrangements are being held by Bellevue Memorial Chapel. Cox, Norma J. Cox, was 87. There'll be a private family memorial service. Efi, Hoffman, Dwork, and Cutler are handling those arrangements. Harold, Tiffany Harold, age 31, Thomas Funeral Home are handling the arrangements there. There's no further information. Hoffmeyer, Alan Richard Hoffmeyer, was aged 80. Private family services will be held at a later date. The Weary Mortuary in Humboldt, Nebraska are handling those arrangements. Jack, Gregory S. Jack, 62. The funeral service is Saturday, December 23rd at 1 p.m. at the West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home in Omaha. Memorials to the Alzheimer's Association, Second Unitarian Church of Omaha, and the Sierra Club. West Lawn Hillcrest is handling those. Larkin, Gary M. Larkin, was 80. He was also a veteran. They are going to do a celebration of life later. The West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home is handling arrangements. Lucas, Mary Ann Lucas, looks like her maiden name was Kavanaugh, was 74 when she passed away on December 16th. Mass of Christian burial is Saturday, December 23rd at 10 a.m. at St. John's Vinay Catholic Church. That's at 5801 Oak Hills Drive. In lieu of flowers, memorials to Creighton Prep, Columbian Fathers, or the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. Efi, Hoffman, Dwork, and Cutler are handling those arrangements. McGuane, M-C-G-U-A-N-E, McGuane, Mary Sharon McGuane, was 81. Her services are today at 10 a.m. at the St. James Church. Memorials to the Sienna Francis House or Mary's Children to direct memorials to the St. Francis Indian Mission. Johnny Gentleman Mortuaries are handling those arrangements. Hitchman, Carl R.G. Hitchman, 67. There are no mention of arrangements, but the Arbor Cremation Society is mentioned. Cephas, Alice K. Cephas was 95. She was from Valley, Nebraska. The funeral is on Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. At the funeral home, the Reichmuth Funeral Home. Memorials to the Valley Rescue Squad and condolences can be sent to the reichmuthfuneralhomes.com. Speckmeyer, Christine A. Speckmeyer, 58. She's from Omaha. The visitation is Friday from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Roeder Mortuary. Memorials to the American Lung Association. Stammer, Leonard C. Stammer, was 84. The funeral service is Saturday, December 23rd at 9 a.m. at West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home in Omaha. Memorials will be directed by the family. Trotter, Aubrey Trotter, age 61. There are no details. Thomas Funeral Home is the contact for that. Wolverton, Mary Ann Wolverton, age 86. Her memorial service will be January 4th, 2018 at 11 a.m. at the Bellevue Christian Center. In lieu of flowers, memorials to Tri-Cities Cancer Guild. That is in Kennewick, Washington. Wonder, Jean Frances Wonder, maiden name Langan. Don't have an age there. Mass of Christian burial will be at St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Church at 10 a.m. on Friday today. In lieu of flowers, memorials to the Durham Museum or the Avoca Public Library in Avoca, Iowa. Efi Hoffman, Dwart, Cutler are handling those arrangements. And that wraps up the
Listeners, memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible, and they go a long way toward keeping us on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when memorials are listed as donor's choice or your favorite charity. Donations may be sent to the Radio Talking Book Network. Our address is 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205 in Omaha, Nebraska. The zip code here is 68152. Thanks for being a Radio Talking Book Network listener and supporter, and Beck and I will be back following a short break with editorials, living and entertainment, business and markets, and sports.
Thank you very much, Ralph and Becca, and we'll return to our readers in just a couple of moments. But first, I'm going to tell you that you're listening to the Radio Talking Book Network, brought to you with the cooperation of KIOS FM in Omaha, and statewide through the facilities of NET Radio and Television. We're proudly serving our blind, visually impaired listeners for over 43 years. And we want to thank the Omaha Association for the Blind for the grant they give us that allow us to bring you these papers every day. And now, per usual, at 11 a.m., here comes Jay Nielsen with the senior lunch menus for today.
Happy Friday. It's December 22nd, and your Meals on Wheels menu today is chicken breast and Fiesta cheese sauce, refried beans, Fiesta brown rice, cinnamon raisin bread with margarine, pineapple, and 1% milk.
And just a reminder, you can hear the senior lunch menus every day, Monday through Friday, right here on Radio Talking Book. In place of our usual public service announcement, I'm going to take just a moment to alert you to some programming changes that are coming up in the next couple of days as we approach the Christmas weekend here on Radio Talking Book. We will have normal programming tomorrow. You will still hear the live newspapers tomorrow from 10 to noon. Our offices will be open. And then we are closing until Tuesday morning. On Sunday, we're going to begin special Christmas programming. We'll be bringing you some Christmas old-time radio and some Christmas readings from our various volunteers. You'll hear It's a Wonderful Life Described, the classic with Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed. And then on Monday, Christmas Day, at this time, instead of the newspapers, you're going to hear a special performance of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, read to you by our own Lindsay Hawley. If you listen to the Lincoln Journal-Star Omaha World Herald on Thursdays, Lindsay reads the Omaha World Herald alongside Bill Everhart. So we're looking very much forward to her three-part presentation of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. I have previewed it, and it is wonderful. She gives George C. Scott a run for his money.
Who's
And
reading
of
it?
course, we'll run Christmas programming all
sure,
through Christmas night. And we'll be
That'll be
back
fun.
Tuesday
She has a
morning,
British
December
accent.
26th, with regular programming. And once again, on Sunday and Monday, we will not have our normal news content. We will have special Christmas programming. And we will return to you Tuesday, December 26th, with normal programming right here on Radio Talking Book. We hope all of you have a very safe and happy Christmas holiday season. And now let's return for hour number 2 of the Lincoln Journal-Star Omaha World Herald with our readers, Ralph Morocco and Becca Jurdy.
And we are back with part 2. We'll begin with letters to the editor, these from the Lincoln Journal-Star. Paul Porch of Lincoln writes, if the Republican Congress is so certain that corporations will take their hard-earned cash and buy new equipment, bring back overseas money, and give raises to employees, let them put a provision in the bill that says if this does not happen, that they will all resign. Since they are so sure that this will happen, it won't have any effect on them at all. The majority of experts say that this will not happen because it has not happened in the past. Also, the majority of Americans do not support the bill signed into law. I would like to know how many of the Congress who are in favor of this bill have actually read the whole bill. Congress needs to get together as a whole and make a good tax bill that will benefit all and not just the rich. It is time for Congress to make a concerted effort to stop the great divide between Republicans and Democrats. Let's once more become the United States. Mace Cooper of Hastings writes, anyone can become an addict, whether you are gay, straight, Hispanic, African American, Caucasian, Asian, male, female, rich, poor, young, or old. You can become an addict easily. Since the Controlled Substance Act was created along with the beginning of the war on drugs, heroin, meth, crack, cocaine, and other drugs have been modified to create stronger effects, causing a sickening number of deaths per year from overdoses. Unfortunately, those who have not seen addiction through their own eyes have seen their loved ones suffer from addiction. People seem to ignore the fact that addiction is a grave issue happening all over the country to people of all backgrounds. Instead, they focus on football or holidays or politics, hoping that if they ignore the issue, it will go away. With marijuana being legalized in states around the country, there has been discussions and studies on how it can be a replacement for opioids. Opioid overdoses kill someone every 16 minutes in the United States, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Marijuana can't replace opioids completely, but if we legalize it and use it along with opioids, we could decrease the strength of opioids and maybe save some lives. Other countries, such as Portugal and Netherlands, have seen a turnaround in their drug epidemics from decriminalizing all drugs. Instead of getting thrown in jail for selling or using drugs, these addicts are sent to rehabilitation and given a fine instead. I think we should do the same and give addicts a chance to be better.
All right, heading to the opinion page in the Omaha World Herald. We're going to hear from G.R. Florine in Omaha. Freedom to bully. University of Nebraska-Lincoln administrators appear to be caught in a difficult situation between competing views of how freedom of speech should be addressed on campus. Some state senators were critical of the handling of the situation regarding student Caitlin Mullen, who was recruiting students for a conservative group. Mullen was verbally accosted by graduate student lecturer Courtney Lawton, technically a university employee. The Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, or FIRE, an academic freedom organization, stated, punishing a faculty member for public political expression on the basis that it lacks civility is unconstitutional. This view is incredibly dangerous in that it would allow any university employee to belittle and disparage a student in any way if that student expressed views contrary to that of the employee. Isn't the purpose of a university to engender rational and logical discussion of various subjects and to foment critical thinking? If FIRE's view of freedom of speech allows institutional bullying, what does this say about the organization? Next, we're going to hear from Thomas Hansen from Omaha. Marante should tackle real problems. I see that Nebraska State Senator John Marante is planning to introduce a bill to require an ID in order to vote. This would be just another roadblock to those who are at the bottom of the economic spectrum who wish to vote. There is virtually no evidence of voter fraud in the state, so this is a solution to a non-existent problem. Why doesn't the senator address some of the real problems that exist in the state, like assuring that all people have access to quality health care without the fear of bankruptcy? Do you have some more?
And I do. I've got Kathleen Parker's column from the Lincoln Journal-Star. The recent excitement over an incredible story about the government trying to ban certain words and phrases I despise and wish, or reminded me of all the words and phrases I despise and wish were banned. For the sake of getting on with it briefly, the Washington Post reported last Friday that officials at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention had forbidden from using 7 words as they prepared their 2019 budget documents. The words were vulnerable, diversity, entitlement, fetus, transgender, science-based, and evidence-based. Everybody went bonkers on cue. Pro-choice activists insisted that such word changes were an attempt to thwart abortion rights. The CDC pushed back and denied the ban. CDC Director Brenda Fitzgerald went straight to Twitter, writing, "I want to assure you there are no banned words at CDC. We will continue to talk about all our important public health programs." What really happened? It's hard to know for sure at this point. The Post sees a heavy-handed silencing, but the National Review's Yuval Levins offers a different explanation. According to Levin sources, the Department of Health and Human Services, which oversees the CDC, issued a style book to departments for budget documents. Included were 3 of the words mentioned above: vulnerable, diversity, and entitlement, with the suggestion that they be used as little as possible because they were either used too often or incorrectly. Now that you mention it, I think I'll add them to my list. Levin was also told that other more intriguing words were mentioned in a meeting as possible trigger words that might so upset congressional Republicans that they'd slash funding. These were fetus, science-based, evidence-based, and transgender. In some cases, alternatives were suggested, such as unborn child for fetus. In other words, if you want these people, congressional Republicans, to fund us, don't use language they don't like. One could call this either, "Oh my God, they're trying to ban words," or you could call it common sense. I'm not sure which is more discomforting, however. CDC guys worried that science-based would so frighten Republicans that they'd kill their budget, or that this could possibly be true. So that happened. Obviously, the government shouldn't ban words, but there's no reason the columnist who gets to be queen for about 750 words can't take a stab. In a gesture of democratic pandering, I even enlisted the help of my kingdom of Facebook friends because they were self-selecting. This survey should not be construed as science-based. But the evidence suggests that my friends are a peevish lot when it comes to misused or overused words, which makes me like them even more. My own personal list, the phrasing of which is rhythmically pleasing, if obviously redundant, begins with nouns that have been repurposed as verbs. When a friend recently said to me that she hadn't been gifted in a long while, I thought to myself, so I see. Then lo and behold, a phrase that will be allowed at Christmas time, I was informed by a linguist that to gift has been a verb since 1550. He noted, however, that he would have interpreted my friend's statement as meaning she hadn't been given as a gift in a while. That too, I'm sure. To put it bluntly, awesome isn't anymore. Snowflake produces more enwa than insult. Pivot, veritable, and in reality and best practices wear us down, as do reach out, share, and think outside the box. Own it if you must, but I'd sell it on eBay, just saying. Breaking news is news. It's devastated, not decimated. You don't effort, for heaven's sake. You make an effort. Or maybe just try, which apparently is a thing. No problem. You're welcome. And I take back my thank you. Literally, where is all this low-hanging fruit, if you don't mind my asking? And no, you're not recording me for quality and training purposes. You're collecting profane diatribes to read at the company holiday party. Nice try. Or just nice. Sick. Stop it. We're not going to unpack anything unless you're my valet, or drill down unless you're the carpenter. We're sick of optics, mansplaining, onboarding, and this, as in what she said. We've had it with closure and ideating, as well as doubling down on the whole 9 yards. No one is woke. At the end of the day, when all is said and done, the fact of the matter is we were all vulnerable as fetuses, some of whom were surely bound to become transgender because evidence-based diversity is what it is. But no worries, it's all good. Believe me, bigly.
Back to opinion in the Omaha World Herald. I believe this does not have an author, but it is the main opinion article. This is public accountability. The Nebraska State Patrol spent decades building its reputation as a law enforcement agency the public can trust. A handful of employees recently damaged that reputation by inappropriately meddling in investigations of some troopers' use of force. The activity occurred on the watch of Colonel Bradley Rice, who was hired and later fired by Governor Pete Ricketts. Colonel John Bolduc, Rice's successor, is making progress in rebuilding the patrol's foundation. His staff spent more than 1,000 hours investigating the troubling allegations. In announcing his disciplinary actions, Bolduc said appropriately, "The standard isn't perfection. The standard is honesty." Because of that work, the State Patrol has a fresh chance to earn back the public's trust. As a result of the 15-week probe, one trooper was fired over his role in the investigation of a fatal high-speed chase in northwest Nebraska in 2016. Rice's second in command, a lieutenant colonel, retired and a sergeant resigned. The major who ran patrol field operations was demoted to captain. A captain was demoted to sergeant. A sergeant and a trooper received unspecified internal discipline. With these actions, Bolduc and Ricketts delivered the accountability Nebraskans expect from their state patrol. Bolduc's comments on Wednesday struck the appropriate balance between protecting the public and managing employee morale. He told troopers, "I want you to know I have your back, but having your back isn't a blank check for every error. There are some mistakes that just can't be tolerated. It is unfortunate that negotiated labor contracts and state personnel rules prevent Bolduc from speaking more specifically about the investigation's findings, names of the officers involved, and details about their actions. Ricketts and state lawmakers would do well to explore whether law enforcement officers who depart under suspicion deserve state protection from such disclosure." The union representing troopers appropriately argues that departing officers deserve the right to contest workplace allegations, and some who were disciplined by Bolduc are appealing his decisions. But there should be a middle ground that improves the public's access to information about such investigations after employees exhaust their due process rights. Meanwhile, it is reassuring to know that the patrol's investigative reports have been handed over to the FBI and federal prosecutors for review. The public would gain access to more specific information if criminal charges arise from the conduct investigated. It may not feel like it today, given the scrutiny of patrol employees' actions, but the Colonel's decisiveness gives the many honest, well-intentioned men and women who work for the Nebraska State Patrol a chance to reclaim the mantle of trust their forebears earned.
And we'll turn to some of the lighter columns in each of our papers. This is the Ask Amy column appearing in the Journal Star. Dear Amy, my 2-year-old grandson's parents refuse to have him immunized. This is causing a huge problem with the parents of our other grandchildren. Our 6-month-old granddaughter has not had all her vaccinations yet, and her mother is worried about her being around the non-immunized 2-year-old. She's refusing to come to our home for the holidays if the unvaccinated child is there. We have several other grandchildren under the age of 10 whose parents are also concerned. Someone is going to miss this family gathering. How vulnerable is our youngest grandchild who is still in the process of getting her first-year shots? Signed, Frustrated and Concerned. Dear Frustrated, I turn to David Thiel, a pediatrician at Advocate Children's Hospital in Park Ridge, Illinois, for professional guidance. Dr. Thiel responds, back in the bad old days when everyone saw polio, measles, diphtheria, and other diseases causing severe illness and death, few questioned the value of vaccines. With the widespread success of vaccinations, these diseases have almost disappeared. Thanks to individual immunity, people who are immunized, and herd immunity. Herd immunity means most people are vaccinated, so everyone is protected. The disease is so rare it can't spread. Herd immunity protects us all, but it is especially important for people with weak immune systems, such as babies, people with cancer, HIV, and cystic fibrosis. If enough people don't vaccinate their children, vaccination rates have been decreasing, herd immunity will decrease, leading to outbreaks of these diseases. The American Academy of Pediatrics notes that unimmunized children are at risk of vaccine-preventable diseases and also create risk of disease outbreaks in young infants and children who medically cannot be immunized. I note the irony that this fortunate 2-year-old is likely protected from preventable disease by being surrounded by others who have been immunized. Because of this, understand that unless this toddler is in contact with people with active measles, polio, or other diseases, highly unlikely, the chance the other children would catch one of these illnesses is exceedingly rare. Dear Amy, I recently got married. I am 44, my husband is 50. It's a second marriage for both. He told me his first wife was crazy and that she fabricated abuse allegations to the point where she has a lifetime restraining order against him. Twice he appealed the court's decision and lost, so the order remains in place. I chose to believe him. Someone sent me some of the court documents outlining what his crazy ex-wife claims he did to her. It was full of physical, financial, verbal, and sexual abuse. I wonder if I was wrong to believe him. What do you think? Signed, Worried. Dear Worried, my understanding is that a lifetime or permanent restraining order is issued through the courts after both sides have presented evidence. The allegations would have to meet a standard of proof at this hearing. Your husband's crazy ex would have had to convince the court that her allegations were true and that she was in continuing danger. Your husband allegedly went to court twice to try to get this lifted, but was unable to convince the court that he was no longer a danger to his ex. Understand that if the ex-wife is volatile, having a restraining order in place would also protect your husband from any contact with her. Without contact, she can't continue to make allegations. Why appeal it? You don't mention who sent you these documents, but you should assume that the person was trying to warn you, and yes, you should take this very seriously. You should go to the courthouse in the county where the alleged offenses happened, if you are able, to access these public records for yourself, or see a lawyer to try to verify them and the claims they contain. You can also contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at thehotline.org.
All right, we're gonna shift over to Heloise. Dear Heloise, I live in Alaska where we have very little daylight, about 8 months of the year. As a result, I use candles a great deal. My problem is that the scratchy section on the side of the box of wooden matches wears off long before all the matches are used. How do I ignite them? I've tried emery boards, but that didn't work. Any suggestions? Maggie in Alaska. Maggie, a lot of people think you can use any scratchy surface to light a match, but it's not true for strike on box matches. That strip on the side of the box contains a chemical that interacts with the match to ignite a flame. You need strike anywhere matches. Heloise. Dear Heloise, it seems that when I travel, I never have enough room to bring back the souvenirs I collect. So I pack only the oldest underwear that I no longer want. When I've worn them for the day, I then trash them instead of packing them to bring home. This frees up enough space for souvenirs and decreases my laundry load. Mary in Pennsylvania. Mary, not only does this lighten your laundry load, it frees up space in dresser drawers at home and helps keep those drawers from becoming messy. Dear readers, the humble spaghetti squash can be used in place of pasta, but unlike pasta, spaghetti squash has only 42 calories per serving. Pasta can have nearly 200 calories per serving, a 1-cup serving on both of those. Pasta also is lacking in vitamin C and A, while spaghetti squash has both vitamins. Spaghetti squash is high in beta-carotene, which helps prevent heart disease. The level of potassium in spaghetti squash helps lower high blood pressure over time. The omega-6 fatty acid is excellent for the brain, and the folate contained in the spaghetti squash is essential for pregnant women to help prevent birth defects. Also, spaghetti squash contains 0 grams of cholesterol. When a recipe calls for pasta, you might want to replace it with spaghetti squash for a more interesting and nutritious dish. Heloise. Dear Heloise, my sister did my laundry when I was visiting her, but she used a fabric softener with a scent I cannot stand. It actually makes me sick. I have washed and rewashed the clothes in question, and the scent is still strong. Help. Lizzie. Lizzie, the next time you launder those items, first pre-soak them in water and 1 cup of baking soda for about 2 hours. Next, launder those same items in 1 cup of vinegar and your regular detergent. And if weather permits, dry outside on the line.
And this is John Roseman's parenting column from the Journal Star. Question. My parents recently told me that my husband and I are letting our toddler run our family and that it's becoming increasingly uncomfortable for them to visit or have us visit with them. They live 10 miles away because of her misbehavior. Mind you, she's only 28 months old. They told me, for example, that she should be toilet trained already. Her pediatrician, however, told us to wait until she was closer to 3. In addition, she throws frequent tantrums and often refuses to do what we tell her to do. That's normal for this age, right? Anyway, my parents told me that I ought to begin reading your columns and books, so I thought I'd just write you and get your opinion on all this. By the way, my parents had me when they were older and are sort of stuck in the old ways of doing things. Answer from Dr. Russman. Saying that your daughter is only 28 months old may go a long way toward explaining this situation. Your parents, being stuck in the old ways, understand that the most advantageous time to deal with any given misbehavior on the part of a toddler is when it first appears, by nipping it in the bud, so to speak. This very active approach to discipline recognizes that misbehavior snowballs roll downhill very rapidly. And yes, I realize I'm mixing my metaphors. For better or worse, major disciplinary precedents are set during the 3rd year of life, 24 to 36 months. These precedents determine to significant degree whether the child's discipline will be relatively easy or extremely difficult from that point on. I'm going to guess that your parents are concerned that by excusing your daughter's behavior on the basis of her age, that you're creating a significant disciplinary debt that will create even more stress down the road for all concerned. I'm sure you want nothing more than for your daughter to be a happy child. Consider then that obedient, well-behaved children are much, much happier than disobedient, ill-behaved children. Common sense confirms that, and so does the best research into parenting outcomes. I urge you to get a move on before your daughter becomes a full-blown family tyrant. First, create a tantrum place, a safe and relatively isolated place where you can put your daughter as soon as tantrum begins. Half bath works well. When screaming commences, if she goes in she goes until the screaming stops. Timeout does not generally work well with older children or major discipline problems, but it can be very useful with a toddler. The child's room, assuming it's not a self-contained entertainment complex, will do. 5 or 10 minutes in relative confinement for disobedience sends a powerful message to a child this age. Use a timer set outside her door to let her know when her time of repentance is up. Your parents are also correct concerning toilet training. Just as it's easier to house train a 4-month-old puppy than a 1-year-old dog, it's easier to train an 18-month-old than a 3-year-old. Do not wait a day longer to begin teaching your daughter the inestimable benefits of clean underwear. Concerning the old ways of raising children, which we abandoned beginning in the late 1960s and began listening to mental health professionals tell us how to parent, it is now plain as day that professional advice based on psychological theory has resulted in a parenting catastrophe. Over the past 50 years, for example, the mental health of America's children has been in free fall with no end in sight.
Thanks, Ralph. I think that we should all use tantrum places. I think that would be a fantastic idea. I'm going to read a little movie review for you from Micah Mertz, the Omaha World Herald writer. All eyes on Oldman as Churchill. Wearing pounds of makeup and acting like his life, or at least his Oscar, depends on it, Gary Oldman plays Winston Churchill in the rarest of things, a fun historical drama. Of all the recent Churchill performances, the most notable being John Lithgow's on The Crown, Oldman's is the most transformative. You would never guess it was Sirius Black himself under all the prosthetics and padding, but once you accept that it's him, it takes a few minutes. You can move on and enjoy the smart and entertaining political thriller going on around him. Darkest Hour, directed with no small amount of pizzazz by Joe Wright, who directed Atonement, wisely bypasses a Churchill biopic in favor of one of the more momentous chapters in the British Bulldog's life. In the early days of World War II, Churchill has just been appointed prime minister after an upheaval in his party. With Hitler's forces sweeping across Europe, Churchill has to decide fast, take his country further into war or negotiate with evil incarnate. We know how this all ended up, of course, and yet it's still plenty exciting to watch it play out here. Though this is ultimately a flattering portrayal of Churchill, the film doesn't shy away from his less appealing traits: the drinking, the negligence of his family, his willingness to lie for political gain. Of course, the film could have been more critical. Churchill's patriotism looked a lot like jingoism to many people. But you know, a movie about a warmonger might not have played so well at Christmas time. And whatever the shortcomings of our hero, anyone looks pretty good when you pit him against Hitler. Darkest Hour is most interested in Churchill as the great orator. The film is nothing if not a clever examination of the creative process. How can a leader, with mere words, convince his colleagues and the country itself that war is the only answer? The film contains many scenes of Churchill slowly, often drunkenly, writing his speeches late into the night. or rather dictating them to his secretary, Elizabeth, played by Lily James. Through the film's artful editing scheme, the late-night writing sessions are juxtaposed with sweeping reenactments of the famous speeches that would come out of them. Wright toggles between the intimate moments and the grand deeds, the backroom dealings and the battlefield. Churchill's big decision plays against the backdrop of the Dunkirk evacuation with hundreds of thousands of Allied soldiers surrounded by advancing German forces. This movie is a perfect companion to Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk. Each film concludes with the same Churchill speech. Oldman might be the main attraction in Darkest Hour, but James, along with Ben Mendelsohn as King George VI and Kristen Scott Thomas as Churchill's wife Clementine, offer strong supporting work as well. There's a quiet scene between Churchill and the King where the mutually distrusting men find common ground and become not just allies but friends. The moment, like much else in The Darkest Hour, does what the best historical movies do: take a God's eye view of the facts, then zooms into the drama.
We'll turn to the business pages in each of our papers. Yesterday was kind of a generally positive day for stocks. The Dow Jones Industrials were up 55.64 at 24,782.29. They're up 25.4% year to date. NASDAQ added 4.4 to 6,965.36, up 29.4% year to date. The S&P 500 was up 5.32 at 2,684.57, up 19.9% year to date. Oil for delivery in February rose 27 cents a barrel to settle at $58.36 on the New York Mercantile Exchange. From Washington, the U.S. economy grew at a solid 3.2% annual rate from July through September, slightly slower than previously estimated, but still enough to give the country the best back-to-back quarterly growth rate in 3 years. The figure was revised down from last month's estimate of 3.3%, the Commerce Department reported Thursday. The change reflected a bit less spending by consumers, which was offset somewhat by increased spending by state and local governments. Still, the 3.2% growth rate followed a 3.1% gain in the second quarter, the first consecutive quarters that growth has topped 3% since 2014. President Donald Trump has pointed to these gains as evidence his economic program is producing results. Many economists believe GDP growth this quarter could hit 3% or better. Congress this week passed a major tax overhaul, giving Trump the biggest legislative achievement of his first year in office. Economists believe the proposal will boost growth temporarily in 2018 and possibly 2019. But then they forecast the positive effects will fade with slower growth going forward because of higher interest rates stemming from the bigger government deficits. But at the moment, economists are optimistic about growth prospects. The Federal Reserve's Atlanta Regional Bank is forecasting GDP growth could hit 3.3% this quarter. If GDP does top 3%, it would mark the first time that has occurred since 3 quarters in late 2004 and early 2005. Trump has predicted the tax cuts will be rocket fuel for the economy, and many economists are looking for a growth spurt next year. The economy is rock solid for now, and with fiscal stimulus kicking in next month, the economy's afterburners could put this economy's rocketing growth rate into even higher orbit. Chris Rupke, chief financial analyst at MUFG Union Bank in New York, said in a reaction to the new GDP report, in all of 2017, the economy is expected to grow about 2.3%, a marked improvement from the slight 1.5% gain in GDP in 2016. For 2018, economists believe growth will be even better, helped by a boost of the Republican tax cuts and a stronger global economy. Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's Analytics, is forecasting growth of 2.9% for 2018. reflecting tax cuts that he predicts will add 0.4 of a percentage point to GDP next year. He expects the tax cuts to add 0.2 of a percentage point to growth in 2019. But even with that boost, he sees GDP slowing to a 2.2% growth rate in 2019 before slowing to 1% growth in 2020 as higher interest rates drag on growth.
All right, money in the Omaha World Herald. Little article about ConAgra. Company posts gains 2 years into turnaround. Excuse me. Sales are rising at ConAgra again. Revamped products, investments in marketing, and a boost from extreme weather returned ConAgra brands to sales growth, elusive in the packaged food industry these days. The maker of Ready Whip, Slim Jim, and Banquet frozen dinners reported net sales growth in its second quarter following 6 quarters of decline. Sales for the period ending November 26th were up 4.1% to $2.17 billion, the company said Thursday. Most of the boost in comparable sales for the quarter came from shoppers in hurricane zones who filled their pantries with staples like Chef Boyardee canned pasta. The gains came more than 2 years into a turnaround campaign that included relocating the 98-year-old company's headquarters to Chicago from Omaha, jettisoning some large business units and shedding staff. ConAgra then revamped its grocery offerings by culling slower-selling products, launching new ones, and modernizing its packaging and marketing efforts. Growth came in all 4 of the company's business units. We have reason to be excited about our future, CEO Sean Connolly told stock analysts on a conference call. Sales growth will continue to come from modernizing old brands like Banquet, which has been liberated from its longtime $1 price thanks to investments in better ingredients and packaging, and returned to growth this quarter, Connolly says. And it will continue to come from deals. ConAgra is actively pursuing new acquisitions, Connolly said. Deals so far have been relatively small, mostly buying established specialty food brands, but Connolly said ConAgra is open to larger synergistic deals, which could mean buying an entire competing packaged foods company. ConAgra on Thursday announced it will acquire a frozen sandwich business. Wisconsin-based Sandwich Brothers makes breakfast sandwiches and flatbread entrees sold in grocery and convenience stores. It has about $60 million in annual sales. Connolly said the frozen handheld sandwiches are a type of food ConAgra can develop and extend into some of its other brands. The overall sales growth came at some cost to profit margins. ConAgra spent more on in-store marketing, including slotting fees to ensure good placement for its new products and eye-catching displays at the end of grocery aisles. And inflation in food ingredients and transportation took a bite. Net income of $224 million, or 54 cents a share, was up from $122 million, or 28 cents a share, a year ago. Adjusted for certain items, earnings per share of 55 cents beat analysts' expectations of 52 cents a share. The stock closed down about 0.75% on a day when the broader stock market was marginally higher. Shares closed at $37.85 each on the New York Stock Exchange.
And from our local area, a new monthly survey of bankers suggests the economy improved slightly in rural parts of 10 plains and western states, but remains weak. The overall economic index in the region grew to 47.8 in December from 44.7 in November. But any score below 50 suggests a shrinking economy in the months ahead. Creighton University economist Ernie Goss said low commodity prices and concerns about trade continue to weigh on the economy in rural areas. Bankers from Colorado, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wyoming participated in the survey. Nebraska's index was 48.3, up from 45.6 in November.
All right. Parked rail cars don't sit well with Cuomo. A major Berkshire Hathaway subsidiary has drawn the ire of a powerful foe, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. The target of the anonymity is Union Tank Car, an operating unit of Omaha-based Berkshire out of Chicago that makes rail cars capable of hauling crude oil. Problem is, unused ones are being stored in a forest in northeast New York called Adirondack Park on rail lines operated by a company specializing in mothballing rail cars until they are needed again. The idea doesn't sit well with Cuomo, particularly after residents began complaining. The Adirondack Park is home to some of the world's most pristine forest lands, which powers its tourism economy, and we will not stand by and allow it to be used as a commercial dumping ground, Cuomo said in a statement. New York is prepared to exhaust all legal options to end this practice once and for all. So far, that has added up to sending a petition to the Federal Surface Transportation Board, which regulates many aspects of the rail industry, asking the agency to order the mothballing company to give the cars the heave-ho. Cuomo also took Berkshire Hathaway to task. The state is calling on Berkshire Hathaway owners of the Union Tank Car Company, which owns the cars being stored, to stop this plan and protect one of the nation's greatest national treasures, Cuomo said. That already appears to be happening in initial stages. About 65 Union Tank Car units had been stored in the area, according to William Constantino, the company's leasing director. This week, 15 of them were ordered returned to service, Constantino told the World Herald Thursday. He also said the cars being stored are clean and well maintained. We expect to place the balance of cars in question back into service as shipper demand continues to increase, Constantino said. We have no plans to store additional cars, nor scrap or abandon any of the units currently in temporary storage at the location in question. Union Tank Car also said the storage location of idled cars depends on the decision of the company hired to do the storing. The company doing the storing is called Iowa Pacific, and it has no connection to Iowa or Berkshire. It was formed in 2001 to acquire short-line railroads and related businesses. It is based in Chicago. It has said it plans to store as many as 2,000 disused tankers on its lines in the forest for up to 10 years, according to Cuomo's petition to the Surface Transportation Board. Iowa Pacific executives didn't respond to requests for comment from the World Herald on Thursday. Union Tank Car has many times been praised by Berkshire Chief Executive Warren Buffett. In the 2012 annual shareholder letter, he boasted that 100 years earlier, the company was owned by the Standard Oil Trust, the monopoly controlled by John D. Rockefeller. When you spot a Union Tank Car, puff out your chest a bit and enjoy the same satisfaction that John D. Rockefeller undoubtedly experienced as he viewed his fleet a century ago, Buffett wrote to shareholders. The puffing has been a little less noticeable recently. The boom in oil production in North Dakota and environs hit the skids a couple of years ago after lower crude prices made the difficult extraction of such oil less economical. At the height of it all, Berkshire-owned railroad BNSF was hauling 500,000 barrels a day from oil fields not well served by pipelines. But production from the northern fields has fallen from 1.2 million barrels a day in 2014 to about 800,000 barrels a day this year. Production is again rebounding on higher crude prices, with demand for tankers slowly catching up. Tank cars are a good business, according to Buffett. Union Tank Car's results aren't broken out within the financial results of Berkshire, which had $183 billion in revenue through the first 9 months of 2017. But the industrial manufacturing unit that includes Union Tank Car had 9-month pre-tax earnings of $3.5 billion.
And at 45 minutes past the hour, we'll turn to the sports pages. Nebraska signed 10 players Wednesday, but one of the biggest coups of Scott Frost's early tenure came Thursday afternoon. Butler, Kansas Community College linebacker Will Honus signed to play for the Huskers, the school announced, marking a key recruiting win for Frost and company over a pair of Big Ten West rivals. Honus racked up 95 tackles, 10 for loss, 3 sacks, and 2 interceptions in 11 games for the Grizzlies. and is considered by some to be among the best junior college linebackers in the 2018 class. The 6'2", 215-pounder had become the center of an intra-division recruiting battle, pitting the Huskers against Iowa. Then on Monday, Wisconsin offered Honus as well, creating a three-way race. Instead of putting off signing until the February period, which would have allowed him time to visit Madison in January after the current dead period ended, Honus made up his mind and signed with Nebraska. He's expected to enroll in the spring semester, giving NU another early enrollee. The deciding factor? The way Butler head coach Tim Schaffner sees it, Honus was excited by the idea that former Husker greats like Frost and Barrett Ruud wanted to return to Lincoln to coach. We have that same thing going on at our level, he said. Will was exposed to guys that played here, won championships here, then came back to coach here. I think that's really impacted him when Barrett showed up in the day or 2 days after UCF played in the American Athletic Conference championship game. A lot of people were talking about the NFL part of Ruud's career. It wasn't that. It was that Barrett was such a good player at Nebraska and now is going to be back and will have the chance to be his coach. That's what means something, or at least it meant something to Will. Honus visited the Hawkeyes the weekend of December 9 and the Huskers the week of December 15, after previously taking visits to Kansas State and Arkansas. Before Butler, Honus played his high school ball at Bishop Carroll High in Wichita, Kansas. He was not heavily recruited then, however, and opted to try to increase his exposure by going the junior college route. It worked. He just blew up, Schaffner said of Honus's sophomore year. What stands out about Honus is just how thorough and how consistent he was over the course of the season. He finished the season exactly the way he started the season, and that was being a huge impact for our defense. It was pretty much a carbon copy every game. He's a lot of fun to coach, and he played at a high, consistent level all season long. Honus is ranked by 24/7 Sports as the #1 inside linebacker and the number 35 player overall in the junior college ranks this year. That gives NU the top-ranked JUCO player at 2 different positions in Frost's first class, as Arizona Western Community College running back Greg Bell signed Wednesday. We've had so many good linebackers, and I didn't want to get skewed in what I'm doing, said Schaffner, who was Honus's position coach. It was listening to our coaches after practices going, why is he always in the right spot? What is he doing? Then on the 3rd or 4th series of our game, he took an interception back 85 yards, and I felt pretty confident in what we had. Honus played in a 4-3 defense under Schaffner and had offers from Division I programs that run both. The Wildcats in Iowa run 4-3s, while the Huskers and Badgers operate 3-4s, and will play inside at NU. He's an in-the-box guy, Schaffner said. He asked me about that, playing in the 3-4 as opposed to the 4-3. But really, with the way offenses are anymore, it's usually a split backer box, 2-backer box, and so those reads aren't going to be a lot different. We play a lot of 3-man stuff. But he's so dang smart that he'll pick up whatever they're teaching him really quickly. The Huskers must replace leading tackler Chris Webber in return players such as Dedrick Young and Mohamed Berry inside, along with freshman Avery Roberts and others. Honus, though, will be expected to compete for playing time right away. Honus is the 11th signee of Nebraska's class and the 14th known commit.
All right, we got a little Creighton women's basketball for you. White makes herself at home. The town of Shelby showed some Nebraska hospitality to Shatrice White and her Florida State Seminoles on Wednesday with an assembly at Shelby Rising City School and dinner at White's home. On Thursday, more than 100 of White's fans followed the team some 85 miles east to Omaha and cheered the 13th ranked Seminoles 92-82 win over Creighton at Sokol Arena. That was awesome to have that kind of support on the road, said White. a 2014 All-Nebraska player at Shelby Rising City, who is now a Florida State senior. It felt like a home crowd. The 6'3" White in her second year at FSU after 2 at Illinois finished with team highs of 19 points and 11 rebounds. The irony is that the Seminoles took control of the game in the second half, with White on the bench. Creighton sizzled from three-point range in the first half, sinking 13 of 22 shots from long range and taking a 51-49 lead into the break. The Seminoles, playing 2 post players together, had trouble guarding CU forward Audrey Faber, who is 6'2", but is comfortable beyond the three-point line, as she is near the basket. Faber and teammates Jalen Agnew and Olivia Elger scored 14 points apiece in the first half, each going 4 of 6 from three-point range. So Florida State coach Sue Semrau went with just 1 post player most of the second half, and the athletic Seminoles extended their defense and challenged more three-pointers. Faber continued to shine, finishing with 30 points in 34 minutes, including 7 of 11 shooting on threes. But as a team, the Jays were 9 for 29 from the floor in the second half and 4 for 13 from long range. When they went small, I felt like that helped them defensively, CU coach Jim Flannery said. Semrau said she figured the Blue Jays couldn't stay that hot from long range. Fortunately, the percentages caught up a little bit, she said, and I think our pressure caught up with them a little bit. The Seminoles, 11-1, who are out-rebounding opponents by 13 a game, forged a 44-34 advantage on the boards against Creighton. They outscored the Jays 20-8 on second-chance points and 54-16 in the paint. We gave up too many offensive rebounds, Flannery said. But Flannery saw plenty to like. Elger, a sophomore point guard from Peoria, Illinois, came off the bench to finish with 20 points, hitting 5 of 8 threes. A knee injury has limited Elger to 4 games this season, but she's totaled 41 points in her last 2. It's awesome having her back, said senior guard Sydney Lamberty, who just hit 2 of 8 shots but contributed 10 rebounds and 9 assists. She can make plays. Just having Elger back makes the Jays better, Flannery said, but he's also seen progress from the team as a whole. They take a 6-4 record into the Christmas break, then open Big East play December 28th at home against Villanova. We've played good teams and we've had good games. That's what we want, Flannery said. We want close game experience and to find out where you need improvement. Semrau said she's glad to come out of Omaha with a victory. We don't play a lot of teams like Creighton that can shoot it that well, run that kind of motion, she said. We can only simulate that so much in practice. I love the way Jim coaches. The players play so hard and they're disciplined. I think they've got a great chance to go out and be a contender for the Big East Championship.
It is bowl time, and today there'll be a couple of bowls played. The Bahamas Bowl features UAB, an 8-4 team, versus Ohio, also an 8-4 team. The Idaho Potato Bowl will feature Central Michigan, an 8-4 team, versus Wyoming, a 7-5 team. Yesterday, another game was played. Temple broke open a close game, scoring 3 touchdowns in the game's final 15-plus minutes to defeat Florida International 28-3 in the Bad Boy Mowers Gasparilla Bowl on Thursday night in St. Petersburg, Florida. Temple, now 7-6, took a 14-3 lead on David Hood's 1-yard touchdown late in the third quarter. The Owls extended the lead to 18 on Frank Nutell's 45-yard touchdown pass to Isaiah Wright with 7:26 remaining. Nutell completed 19 of 29 passes for 259 yards. Temple piled up 400 total yards of offense while also forcing 3 FIU turnovers, including 2 in the second half. FIU, now 8-5, was aiming for its first 9-win season in program history.
All right, we have the Family Fair Athlete of the Week. Akili Felici is back, armed with a smooth shooting touch and a greater appreciation for basketball. After a year of what could be termed medically induced anonymity. Her second torn ACL in 3 years kept her out of basketball last season and made her feel at times as though she were invisible. When you're out, you're really sad, said the Bellevue West junior, who is committed to playing at UNO. Nobody talks about you. You kind of feel like you're left out, like a ghost. If Felicie felt left out a year ago, she has changed all that in the first month of the new season. Last Friday, on the same night twin brother Nico defeated Omaha Bryan with a buzz beater, Akili left her calling card by draining 11 three-pointers and scoring 41 points, both school records, in the Thunderbirds' 67-21 victory over Bryan. The performance earns her the Family Fair Athlete of the Week, which is chosen through voting on anyprepzone.com from finalists picked by the Omaha World Herald. Everything seemed to go right for Felicie, who scored her team's first 14 points and entered the fourth quarter with 35 points. With the Thunderbirds starting to pull away, Coach Rick Mintkin told her she had just a couple of minutes to make a run at the school record of 40 points. She quickly hit a pair of three-pointers and took a seat on the bench with the rest of the starters. That was so much fun, she said. When you're hurt, you learn to never take it for granted. There were times at practice when I remember thinking, I'm not feeling it. I'm not going to go 100%. I just don't want to be here. Being hurt is not fun. I've learned to appreciate the game more. Friday, the Class A number 8 Thunderbirds, 5-1, will get their first true test when they take on top-ranked Millard South. This game will determine where we are as a team and where we could go, she said. We're getting used to each other. It takes a while. We're getting more comfortable with each other. Basketball has always been special to the Felicie family. Dave Felicie played at UNO and coached his children on youth teams. Mia, a guard who graduated last year and is now a freshman at UNO, set the single game record with 10 three-pointers last year before her younger sister broke it. Meanwhile, Nico is a dynamic guard for the Bellevue West boys. There's no mistake that this is now her team. The opposition has made it a point to try to take her out of the offense by implementing double teams and box and one zones. It was frustrating at first, but I'm getting used to it, she said. I'm still learning ways to get open. My coaches tell me that if I'm not open, there are things I can do to help my teammates get open. If I can't do my job, there are other ways I can help them do theirs. If there are two people on me, it means someone is always open. That wasn't the case last Friday night. Felicie hit her first shot, which set the tone for the rest of the game. When the first shot goes in, I feel a lot more confident, she said. If I start the game missing a lot, I'm obviously not as confident, but I'll keep shooting. I want to do as much as I can to help my team.
Nebraska, quite frankly, shouldn't need to rely on its late game resolve Friday night when it hosts Delaware State. But it has to be comforting for the Huskers to know those stealing nerves are there when they need them. The Huskers showed again Wednesday their ability to stay with it when things aren't going well, closing strong in a 104-94 win over UT San Antonio in a game that was tied with a little more than 4 minutes left. I think it could have been very easily a game we couldn't have hung around with, Husker coach Tim Miles said after the game. Then, just like East Illinois, I think we showed some toughness mentally and just did enough and had enough talent to be better. Nebraska showed in preseason scrimmages against Mississippi State and Iowa State its ability to close out games. It's continued in the regular season in wins over Eastern Illinois, Long Beach State, Boston College, and Minnesota, among others. While it hasn't always been pretty, it's a trait that was missing in previous years as the Huskers struggled to find footing before the start of Big Ten play. Friday's game, set for 7 p.m. tip at Pinnacle Bank Arena, figures to showcase Nebraska's newfound talent disparity over its non-conference opponents that was missing in previous seasons. It is top of the hour, so time for us to make way for other programming on the Radio Talking Book Network. I'm Ralph Morocco. It's been my pleasure to read for you today.
This is Becca Jurdy. It was my pleasure as well, and I wish everyone a happy holiday season.
Thank you very much, Ralph Morocco and Becca Jurdy, and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to both of you. You are tuned to the Radio Talking Book Network, brought to you with the cooperation of KIOS FM in Omaha. and statewide.
Thank you for filling in.
Yes, that's fun to do every once in a while.
Visually impaired listeners for over 43 years. Just want to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that we will be running our live newspapers tomorrow morning, and then Sunday and Monday we will not be on the air live. We'll be running special Christmas programming, including a special reading of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, performed by Lindsay Hall on Monday. Christmas Day, we hope you'll be tuned in for that. Merry Christmas to all of you from all of us here at Radio Talking Book. Please stay tuned now in just a few seconds for Community Conversations with Jay Nielsen.
Longer than at first glance, but yeah, you do have a look at the. That's really good.
Brian thinks so too. He said that I should make you read once a week.
Merry Christmas.
Well,
Since
yes, same
I'm
to you,
a
John.
writer, He said I could do
You
that.
can make me read, okay.
Yeah. I should enjoy it. Anyway, Tom Sheeran called. I sent Sybil an email about, because it looks like we were 4 different places for some of the days, and so I'm not sure. But on paper, she has that.
There it is.